So wonderful to see you again. It's Judy from Coffee, Cookies, and Books. And what we're going to do today is my mid-May reading wrap-up. So I really love it. If you stick around, I have some wonderful books to share with you. And again, so great to see you. So this is actually my second attempt at this. Now I am going to apologize. I don't know what the sound is going to be like on this. My sound system, my microphones stopped working, and I am just recording this directly with the phone's sound system. So hopefully it'll be okay. I know it's a bit echoey in this room. And I don't know if I'll be able to get rid of that or not. I know I could do it in iMovie, but I haven't been using iMovie to do my editing, so I have to figure out if I can do it in DaVinci Resolve. So we'll try to fix it. So we're going to try and go through this review pretty quick. I have a lot of books to review, and even though it's mid-May, I know I mentioned, and I do have it linked below, that I am participating in Escape the Readathon. So up to mid-May, I've already read 15 books. Now I do have some DNFs in the pile, so I will go over that with you. But there's a lot to cover. So we're just going to go through it as quick as I can. First is the DNF. So I actually put both of these from Kingfisher on What Moves the Dead and What Feasts at Night, and I had put them both on, and I started reading the first one 25 pages and didn't like it, so I decided to DNF it, and I will unhaul this. It just isn't for me, and I knew it right away as soon as I started reading it. I read Thornhedge by Kingfisher. I did not like that book at all. So the writing style was very familiar to me. So I'm a little concerned. I do have one or two more of her books. So I don't know how I'm going to feel about them, but we'll give them a try. Honestly, I can't see myself purchasing another one until I decide how that goes, because this just did not like the writing style. So I think that's what the problem is. I don't think it's necessarily the subject matter of the book, because this is a very different style book. Anyway, yeah, disappointed, but that's the way it goes. Okay, so next one we have is 206 Bones by Reichs. This is the 12th book in the crime mystery series by Temperance Brennan. She is a forensic anthropologist, and she does investigations, and this one is in Montreal, centers around some older women that have turned up dead, and for me it was kind of a middle of the road, perhaps not as good as most of her books are. The odd one every now and again I find just doesn't hit the same way for me. Sometimes it'll be just how she might have written it, and in this case I think that was kind of part of it. The other parts is the odd time I'll find one of her novels will move a little on the slower side, and I did find that this one moved a little bit slow and it was sluggish in certain parts. But you know, it had the same cast of characters, included Andrew Ryan, which is her kind of on again, off again sort of detective that she has a thing with. I do like the fact that the characters are slightly on the older side. So, you know, obviously I can relate to that a little bit more, but yeah, overall it was not bad. So this one, like I said, it was centered around some older women who were being killed, and it not necessarily were they all exactly the same. It started off with this one particular case that they were going backwards sort of in time on it. So that was the thing, that this one kind of time jumped back and forth a bit, And I found that that kind of broke the story up in such a way that I didn't care for it. Anyway, not a bad book, not one of the best ones in the series, I will say. That was for sure. Okay, so then the next book that I read, which again, it was kind of like, you know, sort of middle of the road for me, but I did really enjoy it, is Stalking Jack the Ripper by Kerri Maniscalco. I've never read any of her books. I do have quite a few. I have her Kingdom the Wicked series, which I know is very different from this. This is actually a rewrite of the story of Jack the Ripper. So it's taking that story, putting it right in the time frame and right in Whitechapel in 1888 when the murders of Jack the Ripper were occurring. And the entire story is written based on that, but it's a rewrite in such a way that is a very personal story. So it has to do with a young girl, Audrey, who it seems that the whole thing of Jack the Ripper is happening to her family. They're involved. There's some question as to whether she thinks her father's involved or her uncle, who is technically a forensic scientist. That is what he does, and she's very interested in that. I think she's only 17 or 18, but it's Victorian England, so she is supposed to act like a lady, and being involved in this sort of thing is not typical for somebody female in Victorian age. So, but she has sort of a side fellow who works with her. His name is Thomas, and Thomas is a student of her uncle's, and you know, they become particularly close. And I just love how the whole idea of how Jack the Ripper kind of unfolds in this story. So just, yeah, I thought it was really great. You know, I mean, it was not a perfect 5-star read by any stretch, but it definitely was entertaining. And there are, it's a 4-book series, and I have all of them. And I'm actually looking forward to reading the next one, even though I'll be the first one to admit, historical doesn't usually hit as much for me, which is probably why it wasn't up in the upper tiers for me, but I still enjoyed it. So we will do this one again. Okay, then the next one I have is another one based on a serial killer. This is Ted Bundy. This is written around the idea of Ted Bundy. It actually takes place during the same time frame and discusses the actual murders, but from a fictional point of view. So it's, I think 1978 is when the murders happened at Florida State University. And so it's written around that and from the point of view of a woman who witnesses everything that happens at the university and actually sees the assailant as he's leaving. So I thought that was very interesting how she wrote this. It's Bright Young Women by Jessica Knoll, in case you can't tell. There was that, and then there was a perspective of a potential victim. So that was kind of another perspective, and it kind of went back in time. So this had time jumps as well, but I liked the way it was written, and it also had time jumps for Pamela, who was the witness, from when it happened to when she had to go to court, and then to the future when he was executed. Now, throughout the whole book, they do not refer to the killer by any name. Now, you know it's based on Ted Bundy, but he is only ever referred to as the defendant, which is what the judge calls him. So that's how she refers to him through the book. So I thought that was very interesting, and because it doesn't give him a voice or a name, which I think is important because it does talk about how he's a very personable guy, very similar to Ted Bundy, right? Like nobody would ever think he was a killer or anything along those lines. So I thought that that was very well done. Yeah, I just really, really quite enjoyed the book, and I would recommend it to anybody who's interested in crime novels. It just the whole way that she wrote it and how that it was based on it, like really followed Ted Bundy, but there was just enough of a difference that it wasn't Ted Bundy, you know? So that was what I liked about it. Like, I thought it was really great, and how it was done was so well written. Okay, then the next one that I read is Chasing the Storm. So this was the 10th and final book in the Stealth Ops series by Brittney Sahin. And it is Finn and Julia Maddox's story. Now, Finn is he's on Echo Team, which is one of the Scott Security's SEAL teams that work Black Ops directly for the president. So they are off the books. That's how they operate. And in this particular case, he is technically supposed to be watching over Julia. There's a whole thing in the beginning on how that kind of happens. And she is trying to avoid him. And it ends up that they end up in the same place in Egypt. Now, this was probably one of my favorite books that she has ever written. And it had to do with one, where they were. So they were in Egypt, Dubai, Sudan, back in Dubai. I mean, it was really great how they moved around in the book. The characters in the book just were so well written, and they came to life really well. Now, Julia Maddox is the sister of Michael Maddox, who is from the very first book that Brittney Sahin ever wrote, which is The Safe Bet in the Hidden Truth series. And Julia is Michael's sister. And she never got her book in that series. And so her coming up in this at the end of the Stealth Ops series is just like, was so great to see her in it. And the two of them have a very funny relationship. It's like just how they kind of get together and how they play it up. And they do a lot of talk, you know, like it's a lot of talking about they're in Egypt and the Mummy movie, you know, because they're both movie buffs, right? And oh my gosh, the whole thing was just so great. I just really loved it. Then it also brings in the characters that move into the next series, which is the Falcon Falls series, which is the follow-up one to this one. And they're all introduced and she just said such a great job with it. I can't recommend it. If you like romance and you like suspense and you just like really great characters, the whole series is fantastic. I would not suggest that you jump into just this one. I would start at book one because you'd be missing so much if you don't start at book one. Anyway, 10 books, but they're all well worth reading. But this one was like probably my all-time favorite. Yeah, I think it was my all-time favorite. Okay, so then the next one was actually a DNF. It was an e-arc that I had from NetGalley called The Last Voyage by Brandy McLaren. And I DNF'd this at about 40%. Didn't like it. Didn't like the way it was written. I had a great premise, and the idea was that they were attempting to create a colony on Mars, colonization of Mars. And this was going to be what they called the final flight. So, and that was because the government was cutting them off. And this was the year 2056. Now, what really kind of bugged me about the book is that at the 40% mark, they still haven't left. So they're still on Earth, and they're still having discussions that are like, it's like so bogged down with scientific terms, weird, like if this guy could have put more long-term sentences, oh my gosh, it was just so bad. And I really tried okay? Because it's one of the main characters who was this EPA science guy, and he was known for being one of these people who talks like he's talking from a scientific manual. But they say that. The problem is everybody talked like that in it. So as I was reading through it, I finally got to a point where I got fed up. 40% we were launching into another scientific discussion about something that I cannot even recall, after what should have been a harrowing experience where somebody tried to kill them and whatever. Like, it was bad. So I didn't finish it. And yeah, that's it for that one. Okay, so then we have Home is Where the Body Is by Jody Holford. So this is a cozy mystery. So this is very middle of the road kind of cozy mystery. I like to read these. I do find that most of them usually sit kind of right in the middle for me. I did have a few really great ones this month though. So this one was kind of, halfway there, and I did really like it. But it wasn't, anything earth shattering. It was cute. It was about this girl, and she moves to take care of her parents' place for a year because they're off sailing the world for their retirement. And it's for a full year. And her next door neighbor is killed. He's just a nasty old man, and she doesn't get off to a good start with him, and she's the one who discovers the body. And so, of course, she's a suspect because she found the body, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, listen, she has this condition where she cannot handle blood. There is a name for it, and I can't think of what the name for it is off the top of my head. But she sees any kind of blood, she passes out. Like even her own blood. She cut her finger at one point through this, and they had to sit her down and because she was going to pass out. Like, she cannot handle blood. So there's no way that she could have stabbed this guy, because she passed out in the hallway just as she saw him from the blood, because he was stabbed, and she found him. So I'm like, you know what? These were really bad investigators. And I mean, it did kind of come to that point that the investigators were just useless, basically. But that would have been the first thing. It's like, oh, you can't handle, like, she passed out. She's not going to stab somebody. She passed out. Yeah, that kind of got me a little bit. But, it was a cute story, and there were a lot of really great characters. And I don't know if I continue on with the series because I didn't find it overly fun. Like, there's a couple of other ones that I read this month that I'm reading more into them because I really enjoyed them. So don't know if I'll read on with this particular one. All right. So then the next one is Murder of a Mail Order Bride. So this is another cozy mystery, second one. There are only two, and this was the second one in the series. First one I thought was okay. This one was great. Like, this one was good from the beginning. I thoroughly enjoyed this one. This was very, very entertaining and good read. It did not stop right from the beginning. So what you have is a mail order Russian bride shows up in this small town where there's Lizzie Hale, and Lizzie is she owns a bookstore, but she's very much involved in the town, and there's her Aunt Charmaine and all of the usuals, and this guy who runs the hardware store has gotten a mail order bride, and this woman shows up who Svetlana is her name, and she's the mail order bride, and literally right at the beginning someone kills her. And it starts right from there because they can't figure out how come somebody would want to kill a Russian mail order bride. Like, why would you want to kill somebody like that? And how the whole story, I don't want to give it away because I don't want to talk about the whole story, but essentially it evolves around Elle, who owns the hardware store, and somebody tries to kill him, attempts to kill him, which of course it doesn't happen, but how the whole thing just was really well written. See, the first book, I would kind of categorize it as that last one that we talked about. It was kind of middle of the road, whatever, but I read that in ebook, but I had bought this one because I got it off of Book Outlet, really inexpensive. So I thought, well, you know what, I'll read this one because I have it anyway. And I loved this one. And I don't know if it's because the reason it was so much better is because knew the characters, really comfortable with them. I felt like it just flowed so much better. There was not a dead point in the whole book. The whole book moved right along. And yeah, I loved the characters. This was a lot of fun. I would totally. I mean, I could even so much as say you wouldn't have to read the first one. I mean, the only thing in here is that you know who the characters are, obviously, because, if you've read the first one, then you know who they are. But I don't think you really have to read the first one. This one is so good. Yeah, I just really loved it. Okay, so next one this is another cozy mystery series. This is Deserts, Driving, and Derelicts by Tonya Kappes. I can't remember what the first one's called, but it is the Camper and Criminals Cozy Mystery Series, and I loved the first one, and I loved this one. Only 150 pages, and it packed a heck of a punch in 150 pages. Let me tell you, it was a complicated story with lots of great characters, dead body, of course, a dog, Fifi, the poodle, was in there. I mean, just the whole story. So basically, in this particular one, you still have May West. Now, May owns a RV campground that she basically inherited from her dead husband in the first one. Her husband was actually one of the dead bodies in the first book, and her ex-husband. And in this particular one, she happened to be with the woman who found the dead body. And it was this rich woman that she had cleaned as gone in and cleaned the house, helping out a friend. And she had to go back and get the check. And when she went back to get the check, she went with this woman into the office and found the dog nanny dead. And yes, I'm talking Fifi, the poodle, the toy poodle, had a nanny. And so anyways, that's where the story kind of picks up from there. And you've got, like, all of the characters are funny characters, and they all play different parts in it. I would say that it even managed to surprise me on who the killer was. There were technically two killers. One of them was a little more obvious. The other one was not obvious at all. So it was kind of like one of those instances where you're like, maybe, right? But yeah, so I loved it. I have actually ordered, because the books are really inexpensive, because obviously not long, and self-published author, so I like to support self-published author, and I think I've ordered 2 or 3 more of them because they're super easy to read. So I love that you can just kind of throw them in between some of the other books that you're reading. Yeah, fabulous. So good. I love books like that. They're just a lot of fun. Okay, so the next one I read is another cozy mystery that I also thoroughly enjoyed, which was also a second one in the series, is Murder at the Movies by Ellie Alexander. And in this particular case, this is the same group that owns the Secret Bookcase bookstore, and it's a mystery bookstore in, is it Red Grove? Red Grove, I think, is the name of the town. It's in Northern California. and it's a very small town. And in the first book, so there's Annie, Murray, Fletcher, and Hal. Hal owns the bookstore, and Annie and Fletcher work for him. And Annie was the one who put together a mystery festival in the first one, which the whole town participated in. Obviously, it was a dead body, got investigated, it was all good. So in this particular one, Annie's contacted by a director of a film, and it is a horror murder type film, kind of like Hitchcock type style, and she wants to premiere it and do kind of a weekend festival type thing, and she's wondering if Annie will help her. And so Annie agrees, and again, all of the businesses get involved because it's all good for business because it brings people into the town. And of course, they come in and there's like, you know, the director, the producer, and the star, and then there's this awful film critic who ends up dead. So that's where it all kind of comes into play there. But what I really liked, again, and I think it's maybe second book syndrome, which is not a bad syndrome to have, but where you know who these characters are, who the main players are, right? Like all of the people who own the businesses and all of the people who participated in the first book are all there in the second book. And again, you know them, so you feel much more comfortable with them. And the book doesn't have to have as much world building and character building. So I think that the book just flows much faster and it's just snappier. And this one was the same thing. It was a snappier one. And if I'm being perfectly honest, I loved it. And I'm going to go on to the third book. Why wouldn't I? I totally enjoyed this one. And I did enjoy this one much more than the first one. So I maybe think it's like, it is definitely where once you're already familiar with the characters and you're already familiar with where they are and what the business is and what they're doing, it's just so much easier following them into the next book. So I will be moving into book 3 for that one. All right. And next one is Fireborne Blade by Charlotte Bond. Now this is again a novella. 164 pages, not very long. It is a fantasy that has dragons, mages, knights that kill the dragons. They hunt them, and it centers around a female knight, and she is on a quest to kill a dragon and get a blade. It's called the Fireborne Blade. And so this story kind of jumps back and forth in time. I didn't mind that so much, but I found that it, even at 164 pages, it dragged a bit because of the jumping back in time. You know, it would, I think if it had been more linear, it would have been a little easier to follow. Now, there were also certain points where there would be inserted chapter, but I wouldn't even call them chapters. It's like just, you know, maybe a couple of pages would be inserted that would give a little bit of history on what was something that was going to occur. But it's like it's telling you from something that's been recorded in history. So I thought that was interesting and I didn't mind that so much, but then it might jump back like 6 months back or a year back, but it still didn't give me the history on Madeline, who is the female knight, who I think that I would have liked to have known, because she was disgraced, and so she's trying to find this blade to win her position back as a knight, which was very hard for her to get in the first place because she was a woman. But that part of it wasn't told in the story. It's just alluded to, that you know that this happened to her. So I think because the book was so short, that there were certain things that I felt were missing in it, but there were things in it that I loved. So like the ending, I loved the ending, but again, it felt like it was crammed into very, very tight time frame because the book was so short. So I think that if the book had been double the size, it didn't need to be huge, but it was only 164 pages. If it had been 300 pages, it probably would have been perfect and would have enjoyed it more. But I did still like it, and I thought it was okay. So that's where I'm at with that. All right. Then the next one I read is Tall Tales and Witchy Fails by Lily Harper Hart. Now this is a cozy mystery, but it is a paranormal mystery. So what you have is you have witches, you have shifters, you have ghouls, you have sirens. So it's like a complete mixed bag, but they all live in St. Petersburg, Florida. So, and it's all today, right? Like it's, you know, they just happen to coexist with humans. And how it was written was really good from that point of view. I quite liked that. I also really liked the main character, which was Hallie. Now, right at the very beginning of the book, Hallie is in an accident. Well, she is hit by an old guy who's drunk in a golf cart. And he injures her so badly she needed hip replacement. And she's just young, right? Like she's barely 30. The old guy's, the woman who basically looks after the old guy, like has to watch him all the time, Cicely, I think her name is, she makes a deal with Hallie, sign an NDA, we'll give you this kind of money, blah, blah, blah. And Hallie's like, listen, yeah, I want the money, but I want a tiki bar on the resort at the beach that I own, that's autonomous. So basically what she wanted her own business, and she wanted it so that she could take advantage of the people who stayed at the resort. So she got what she wanted, and then it comes up a year later, and she's got this bar, and she's running this bar, and I mean, it was really good. The interaction between the characters was one of the best parts of the book. Okay, like I loved all the characters, but it was how they communicated and interacted together, because it was real but comical. Okay, like these people were all characters. And so of course what's happening is girls are going missing, and this guy shows up at the tiki bar who is a private investigator, and he's looking for a missing girl. So it's another missing girl. And Hallie is like, yeah, I remember her. She was here. Like, she, you know, she remembers her from her bar, and tells him that. And when he leaves, Hallie goes looking for her siren friends and says, so we've got a total of 5 girls missing, and tells them about this guy who came by. Well, he happens to follow Hallie because he's a shifter, and he knows that she's a witch. And so he sees her and listens to their conversation. And so it all ensues where he and Hallie have to work together, along with a few other people, to try to figure out what's happening, because one of these girls ends up dead on the beach. But they know that she was the first person to go missing, and she had been missing for quite some time before she ended up dead. And the way how dead she was, she had only been dead for a short amount of time. So they knew it was just, the clock was ticking. They needed to find these girls. And so that, you know, you had that, but then you had all these great characters. I enjoyed this thoroughly. This was book 1, and you know, it was slightly longer. It was about a 250-page book, but it was a perfect length. It never dragged. It was a lot of fun. The characters were a hoot and a half, and I will be reading on. I've already loaded the next one right into my Kindle Unlimited, because the whole series is available on Kindle Unlimited. I can't remember how many books exactly there are in the series, but there's quite a few. Could be 12. Well, that's like the one that I talked about, Deserts, Driving, and Derelicts, there are like 42 books in that series. So it's like, as long as it's constantly good, you're just going to keep reading, right? So I will be reading the next one in that. Okay, so our next book is The Serial Killer Guide to San Francisco. So this is a book about a woman who owns a guide business, and she takes people around San Francisco to places where serial killers, because San Francisco has an unusual amount of serial killers. Now, initially, I thought it was going to be a cozy murder, and it does say kind of cozy murder, but the book felt more like an actual crime, murder, mystery type book. It just was super well written, and this is the first book in the series. The second book is coming out in the fall, and I loved the main character. Now, the main character in this, Kappes, she's a mom. She has a daughter in college, and she's divorced. And her grandfather was one of the serial killers from San Francisco. But her grandfather always said he didn't do it. And Kappes actually believed that her grandfather didn't do it, but her father didn't want to talk about it. And her mom, to keep peace, they didn't want to talk about it. So she felt that she could never figure it out. Now, once she got old enough, she did go and visit her grandfather in prison before he died. And she met with him and she asked him, and he said, I didn't, he's continued to say he was innocent. He didn't kill. Anyway, so that's all part of the story, because right at the very beginning, a woman gets killed using the same MO as what her grandfather had used, which is rather unusual, right? So that happened right at the beginning. And then fast forward a little bit into the book, and her ex-husband's mother, who she still has a lot of connections with and who is very wealthy, she ends up dead in the same way. So that's kind of like your second victim. And because of her association and her daughter's association with this woman and everything, they're all suspects, basically. And because of the fact that they were killed like the grandfather's MO, of course they're suspects. So this is her investigation, kind of working a bit with the one police officer, one of the detectives, who lets her in on some of the stuff to do with her grandfather and everything. And ultimately, this is her investigation. And then along with that, she is trying to look into what happened with her grandfather, because this is something that she's always wanted to do and she's never done it. And her friends who run the business with her and work with her convince her it's time for her to do this. So it's all in here. And let me tell you, it was a very good book. Thoroughly enjoyed it. And I say that if you like murder mysteries, crime novels, you'll really, I can't see why you wouldn't like it. It was super well done, and I thought the characters were written really well, and just the whole story, how it all unfolded, was fantastic. Loved it. And I am definitely going to get her second book, because if it's written just as well, I'm sure I'll enjoy it. Okay. So then the next one that I read is Finlay Donovan is Killing It, and I loved this book. Loved this book. I can't say enough about this book. I wasn't 100% sure what I was getting. Like, I knew that this was an instance where this woman was mistaken for a contract killer, and then asked to, that she was supposedly asked to kill somebody. But I didn't get, you don't really get the whole feel of it till you read this. So in the beginning, I mean, basically she's a mom and she's a mess. She's divorced. She's got two very young kids, 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. And the 4-year-old, they're both a handful, but the 4-year-old is a real handful. And her ex-husband's a dick. And her ex-husband is like involved, cheated on her, and is engaged to marry the other woman, and basically is trying to not take care of her and her two kids properly. So, she's trying to keep a roof over her head, and she's supposed to be a writer, and she's supposed to be writing a book, and she hasn't written anything, and she is under contract. So I think what she writes is she writes basically like kind of romantic suspense novels. It's slightly smutty, that kind of thing. So after a really rough day, she goes to Panera to meet her agent about the fact that she has written this book. And she's sitting there and she's talking to her agent about this. And this woman who is sitting next to them overhears the discussion. And the way that the discussion kind of comes about, she misinterprets it and thinks that Finlay is talking about having committed a murder. And I mean, you wouldn't think that, like, how would you think that? But when you hear the like when you read the conversation, or I guess suppose if you hear it if you do the audiobook, I don't do audio, but when you see how it transpires, you can get why this woman thought that, right? And she leaves a note for Finlay. And Finlay calls her and she's like, oh, I don't understand. And she's trying to talk her way out of this. And the woman's like, no, I'll give you $50,000 basically to get rid of my husband. And it's like, and the thing is, she needs the money. But at the same time, she like guilty conscience and everything. And her sister is a police officer. So you've got that, right? But, so what she does is she gets dressed, she puts a wig on, she goes to the bar where apparently her husband's going to be, this woman's husband's going to be, just to see. I don't think her intention when she went there was to do anything to this guy. But the way the whole thing transpires, basically she ends up with him and he ends up dead. I don't want to say what happens because you got to read it. Yeah. You have to read it. The whole thing is just crazy, and it ends at the very end on a crazy cliffhanger. Okay? Like not anything bad to do with Finlay or anything like that. But what happens in the very end? I was like, oh no, oh no. And I can't wait to read them. I have all of them. There's 5 books in total. And I'm glad I bought all of them. I got them through the book outlet. Because sometimes what happens with the book outlet is they'll have a series, but they don't have them all at the same time. So you have to get them kind of one after another. And the only one that I didn't get on book outlet was the very last one. And I pre-ordered that one because it just came out, the very last one, I think January, February. It just came out. So yeah, loved this book. I cannot wait to read on with that series. So that's it. I don't have any more for you. Again, I apologize about the sound. I don't know exactly what's happening with this. Sometimes it's working, sometimes it's not. It could be just the phone and how the phone accessory is communicating with it. Yeah, it's just being a real pain in the neck. But anyway, at least I know this does work, and hopefully I can get it to get rid of any weird ambient sounds. We'll give it a try. In the meantime, very much like it if you could like and subscribe to the video. I am very, very close to 500 subscribers, which is kind of the first milestone, and I would love it if you could help me get there. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention is, of course, I do not give you my star ratings, but you will find them all below. I put all the names of the books and timestamps in so that you can just jump to whatever book you want to jump to if you want to listen over again. And if you have any questions for me or anything like that about any of the books that I've mentioned, feel free to ask. I'm always happy to talk about them because I love talking about books. So that's it for today. And hopefully the next video, I won't have to redo it all over again, because let me tell you, I rushed through this one very much so. We will see you in the next video.